Good morning, everybody. Welcome on our webinar on Global Lease Center IFRS 16. During the webinar, we will show you the demo of the Global Lease Center tool. Before we start, I would like to share some practical logistical details for the webinar. So everybody, all the participants are automatically muted. The webinar will last maximum 1 hour. We do foresee a little Q&A session at the end of the webinar if there are questions. It could be that we are not able to answer the question yet because there's maybe no time, and we will ask them afterwards. You can ask your questions in the chat functionality of the GoToWebinar application. The webinar will also be made available afterwards. You'll receive an email with a link to our Finvision YouTube channel. And the slides are already made available in the GoToWebinar app in the handout section. So look for the handout section, and there you will see the slides that we are sharing. The speakers for today is myself. I'm Sander Faye, and I'm a partner at Finvision, primarily working on IFRS consolidation, reporting, and XBRL projects, and also on the IFRS 16 projects. And I'm also glad that we have Burak from Amana present, who is the IFRS 16 expert of Amana. And Amana has developed the Global Lease Center solution. Finvision and Amana work already since a couple of years together, where Amana supports Finvision with effective tools to realize our projects in the area of IFRS and reporting. So we are the reseller and implementation partner of the Amana tools in Belgium. And the Amana tools are Global Lease Center, which we will show you today, Smart Notes, which is a full disclosure management system, and XBRL tool, XBRL Tagger, and Global Tax Center. So that are the topics that we will touch on during the webinar. I think we will spend most of the time on the demo for the Global Lease Center, so you really can have a good understanding how the tool can help you. We will show you the most important features also of the Global Lease Center. And at the end, we will share with you some best practices when you would move to a tool, and what potentially are the pitfalls that you need to consider, or the potential differences that you may have between your previous tool, which in many cases is Excel, and the Global Lease Center. So unfortunately, IFRS 16 can be rather complex. It can be simple if you have simple contracts, but it can also be complex from a top view. From a top view, it may look simple because we have contracts and we just need to calculate them. In the beginning, assets are equal to liabilities, and then we need to amortize or depreciate the asset, and then we need to account for the lease liability against the payments that we make. Unfortunately, this can be quite complex because contracts can have different features, such as extension options, such as termination options. You can have multiple modifications of a contract during a year, and then it comes a bit difficult how to manage that through, for example, Excel. So Amana Global Lease Center tool will support you in the process in a very standardized and intuitive user interface way, and intuitive user interface, and will simplify the process for you as a user. So the user interface will guide you through several steps until measurement and the reporting. And the tool also ensures that there's no inconsistency in the data, and that certain data fields must be completed. So the tool will help you, will pay your attention to that. They will carry forward also inputs to other fields. There will have to be a certain format, but the tool will help you with that. There are pre-configured formulas to measure the lease liabilities and assets. They're all configured, so you don't need to manipulate them because they're all tested and work very well and already with multiple of clients. And of course, also the tool is flexible. It ensures that the posting schemes are available. You can import the posting schemes to import or to book into your accounting system like Navision, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, etc. It's independent of the tool that you use. The accounting tool can also be your consolidation tool like Cognos Controller or SAP BPC or Sigma Console. And it will also deliver you the journal entries to import them into your accounting system. And also the journal entries can be customized if necessary. So that's a bit how it works. And Burak will show you that immediately during the demo. We always start with an interface. It can be an automatic data import through Excel, through an XML file, or through a CSV file. So you can import the data, but also there's manual input that you can do. So often for complex contracts with multiple features, it's often better to do the manual input rather than thinking how to fill in the Excel and then import the Excel. And that's here you see the steps how the Amana Global Lease Center tool will support you. You start with the data collection. There will be categorizations done, meaning, for example, if you have short-term lease exemption applied or the low value exemption applied, he will categorize and put them as this is a short-term lease, this is not a short-term lease. He will do the measurement, the calculation. You will see all the tables, the depreciation table, you will see the movement of the lease liability, an amortization table. You will have the posting entries, the accounting entries, and then you will lots of data output reporting, the booking vouchers, but also reporting. And that's how actually it will works. And reporting will be used by the accounting and also by the controllers to ensure that the booking is also a review that the booking is also correct. So yeah, let's go immediately to the tool. I will give the word to Burak. And one moment I will make himself a presenter. And Burak will guide you through all the features of the Global Lease Center tool.
Perfect. Sam, thank you for the introduction. And hello, everybody from my side. As Sam said, my name is Burak from Amana, and I will show you the Global Lease Center now. And I hope you will get a good overview of the workflow of the GLC now. And here, first of all, it's important to know that the Global Lease Center is a web-based application, and everything what you need is after the installation of the Global Lease Center, the link of your tool and your login information. And here, as you see, you can log in here, and now we will do it as a super user. And here, I think we will start with a short overview of the process as Sam described it. Here you see the process steps of the Global Lease Center. It is divided into 5 steps. We are starting with the data collection, then in the next step, the categorization, the measurement, the entry formulas, and the data. And for each process step, you will find here the sites. And here you will find the settings. I will show which information you need to work with the GLC and to add your contracts and for the process in your company. And here on the right hand, you see the user menu where you can choose the language, the lessees, the companies of your company, the lessees, and here you have the report repository for the report and for the booking voucher. I would say we start with the settings here. The first step here is the system settings. This is more technical and not relevant in the first step. Here you will find, for example, the application version or some other details about the memory. And what is important to know is that we have for the most of the transaction you do in the Global Lease Center a log file. And if you have a bug or problem in the tool, you can send us the Amana GlobalLeaseCenter support team, and we will check the log files. And here you will find the system flags, the configuration of your tool. The next step, here you will find the countries. Here we added all countries on the world here with the Alpha 2, 3 and IRC code here, and the currencies. The only thing you can do here to archive or activate the countries you need during your lease accounting. And therefore you have two sides of view, the active data and the archive data. So the first important thing what we do in the first workshops with our customer, we collect in the first step the internal business partners. Those are the lessees in your lease contracts. And here you have the possibility, as Sam mentioned it, you can import your internal business partners or you can add your internal business partners manually. Herefore, we have standard CSV import interfaces. So you can collect your information in Excel files and generate CSV files, and you can upload here it. Or the classic way is to add it manually, and I will show you the data fields here, what GLC needs and how GLC works in the manual data entries. Yes, you see the red thing here and the one of four fields. Here you see the star. These are the mandatory fields in the GLC. That means you have to do the entry here, otherwise you have no possibility to save your entry here. We can do it here if we want to add a lessee B, for example, and this has the company code 2020. You can choose here a parent company if you have structure in your company and you want to show it here in the GLC. You can select a parent company. You can build the company hierarchy. And in the next step, the GLC wants to know what the functional currency of the lessee is. And here you can enter euro and select the country. And as you see, we added all mandatory fields and we are able to save our entries. And here you will find other data fields, which are optional fields. You can add it or don't do it, but this is not relevant for the lease accounting. Okay, and now we can save our entry, and here you see overview of your internal business partners. And I hope we will find our entry now here, so lessee B. Okay, in the next step, you will find 4 information which are not mandatory information for lease accounting, but in our projects, we learned that the most of our customer needs minimum one of these information in the booking voucher, such as accounting area, profit center, cost center, or business units. And here you have the possibility to add this information under the master data, and you can use information under data collection, and you will find it later in your booking vouchers. It's important to know you have the possibility to enter this information here, and then you can, during the project, validate which information you really need, and then in the first workshops, we add the information together with our customer, or the customer add the information here, and this is easy to do here. In the next step, you will find the currencies. Here, you have to import or add manually the exchange rates for the calculations later in the measurements and in the reports. Here you have the possibility to add closing rates or the monthly average exchange rates for each combination of currencies and for every effective date. In the next step, you will find the asset classes. This is imported master data because you will later need asset class specific account numbers for your for the posting records. And here you have the possibility to add the for you relevant asset classes such as real estate buildings or business equipment, car fleet, or technical equipment, and you can define here whether asset class can categorize as a short-term or not, or as a low-value component or not. And you can define here the minimum and maximum useful life for each asset class. And here you will find the overview of your asset classes in the tool. And in the next step, you have the possibility, if you have a low value components and if you want to proceed it in the GlobalLeaseCenter, you can add here the thresholds for low value components for each component. And in the next step, you will find the interest rates. Here you also have the possibility to import the files or to add it manually. Here you will find one interest rates curve for business equipment, for example. Here it's important to know that you can add interest curves here depending on three information: the asset class, the currency, and you will see it here in detail, depending on the duration of the lease contracts. Here, for example, we have added in our demo system here for the asset class business equipment and the currency euro, and the valid from date beginning of 2019. For each duration, you can add another interest rate, and this is comfortable for the data collection. I will show it later. When we add a component, the GlobalLeaseCenter will add the interest rate depending on the duration of the component, the lease component, and depending on the currency and asset class, the interest rate automatically. That means that the user don't have to search for interest rate because we will add it here under the master data, and you can use it for each entry. And here, a short introduction to the benchmark interest rate. What is this? In IFRS 16, you can have fixed payments, or you can have fixed payments which are depending on an index, for example. And here we need a technical trigger for that. That is depending on an index. And here you can add one dummy index, for example, for the consumer price index, and we will need this information later when a payment change, you want to add a payment change, and this is a difference between the change of a fixed regular payment and a fixed regular payment, which is depending on an index. And here you will find the roles and users. How does it work? As you see here, we have defined some roles which enables the user later to do different things in the GLC. That means a data collector, for example, can only collect the data, categorize, and for example, can calculate the entries. And you can different between user which should only collect data for data reviewers, for example, or for system admins which should see the settings. And you are here very flexible to define your own role, which you need for your project. And here we can see it. You can here see every side of the GLC here, and you can add them a role value, read, edit, or execute, and you have the full control of what everybody can do or not do in the GlobalLeaseCenter. Here, this is the definition of the roles, and in the next step, you can add the individual user, the login information for each user or person in your company who should use the GlobalLeaseCenter. And here you can define the username, the expire date, and the password, and then you can add a role and visibility. That means every user gets a role. There you define what he can do and not do in the GlobalLeaseCenter. And in the next step, you have the possibility to say, okay, you have the visibility only for one company or two company or for a region of for example, for Germany, for Belgium, for countries, and he will be able only to see the data and can only do the things which is defined in the role for the companies you select here under the visibility. Perfect. This was a short introduction to the master data to get the GlobalLeaseCenter ready to work. And it works so that it looks like much information, but we do it usually so, and Finvision, I think, also that in the first workshops we collect together with our customer the information and do the manual entries or the import files to get the GlobalLeaseCenter ready to work with it.
Burak, I will explain after the demo how typically an implementation works, so the people have an understanding of that.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, now here we talk about the master data and set up the GlobalLeaseCenter, and we can go forward with the data collection. Here, as you see, the data collection is primarily divided into 3 steps. We need here the business partners, the lessors in our lease contracts. Then we have the contract and the contract components. Here, the data fields are the same as here for the internal business partners. You need a company name, you need a vendor number, and you can select a related internal company, but is not a mandatory field. And you need the country of the lessor. I added here one lessor here. We will work with this lessor here. And in the next step, we have the contracts. The contract is important to know in the GlobalLeaseCenter. We add a contract. For example, you lease several of cars and you have one contract, but several lease objects, so each car. And here you can add only the contract, the information such as who is the lessor, the contract number, the contract party who is the lessor, the country, and the contract owner. And this data field is automatically filled in with the lessee you have selected here in the user menu. Here, as information, you see here all your own internal business partners, and you will see here only the internal partners for which you have the visibility defined under the master data. And now you have the possibility to add the contract here, the begin date and the end date of a contract, and the regular lease term in months. The GLC will calculate this automatically. And what is very useful, you have the possibility to add here PDF files of the contract. This will help you later to add the contract components in detail here. You can open it and put it here to the right side and can enter your contract. And it's also useful for a reviewer or auditor if they want to check the entries. And here I prepared it for today, and you can save it. And you see in the list we have the contract here. And now in the next step you can add the contract components. Here you have to select your contract, and then you can here I added still one component, but we will add a new component under the same contract. It's important to know that the contract components, the lease objects, are relevant later for the categorization, measurement, and for the postings. Here we can add a second lease object under the same contract. Here we start with the lease identification. You will find those questions also in IFRS 16. Here you have the indication whether your entries are a lease object or not. And if you say here yes, okay, then the GlobalLeaseCenter, yes, okay, it is a lease object, and we require more information as it would be a non-lease component, as you see here. So in the next step, you need to add the general information. Here some fields are pre-filled, as you see, such as the contract number. We see, okay, the new lease object is related to the contract real estate. And you can enter here real estate name for the lease object, such as real estate 2. And you can here add the information, as I mentioned, under the master data, that you have the possibility to add this information, but you don't have to do it. And you will find here in drop-down the information which you added under the master data. Okay, we select here the cost center. And now we have the begin date of the lease object and the end date of the lease object. This is pre-filled with the begin and end date of the contract, but you have the possibility to say, okay, under this contract we have two lease objects, and the first begins here and the second begins 2 months later. You can change here the date and the end date if you want. And here you will find the calculated end date of the component. This will change in cases where you have termination options or extension options which are reasonably certain, and extensions or reduces the lease term. And here you will find the component currency, and here you have to add comments for review, for example, or information you need later, you can add here information. And here, now we filled in all mandatory fields. We can go forward to the next tab, to the underlying asset. And as you remember, we added under settings the asset classes. And here you will find the asset classes you have added here under the setting. That means that the data collector don't have to search for the asset classes. He only have to select it here in the drop-down. And as you see here, the interest rate, the GlobalLeaseCenter fills the interest rate here automatically depending on the asset class, the currency, and the lease term. In the next step, here you see the threshold for the low value components, and you can say, okay, it is low value or not. I think for real estate it is not typically that is low value. And here you have the possibility to add a purchase option. Here per default, you will see the slider is on no, but if you have a contract with a purchase option, you can switch to yes. And you see the GlobalLeaseCenter requires more information if you have a purchase option. And you can add here. And here you have to add the date of the purchase option, then the value. If you have to pay for the purchase option, you can add it here. And here is a question: is it reasonably certain to exercise the purchasing option or not? It's important to answer this question because this has effects on the calculation of the lease liability and the right of use asset. In our case, we can say, for example, yes, and save the entry. And here, the GlobalLeaseCenter asks for the useful life of the underlying asset. And this is also important to add here the information because it is relevant for the depreciation of the right of use asset. Okay. I hope everything is clear at this point.
It is clear for me, Burak.
Okay, fine, sir. Thank you. Okay, then I would say we go forward to the lease term. As I said, you have the possibility to add extension option and termination option here. If you switch your slider to yes, the GlobalLeaseCenter wants to know more information here. And here the GlobalLeaseCenter asks for the begin date of the extension option, for example, and the end date of the termination option. And then the same question: is it reasonably certain or not to execute the extension option? And here you have the possibility to add your payments during the extension period. I will show it later how to add payments in the GlobalLeaseCenter because it is the same workflow for extension option and for the payments during the regular contract term. Yeah, we'll switch it to no, and here I want to show you that you have the possibility to add a termination option. It's the same logic. You have to add the date of the termination option, is it reasonably certain or not, and do we have any payments for penalties or not, and then you can go forward. So here the payments. It's an important part of the GlobalLeaseCenter. Here you will add the payments for the basic lease term with the add file and edit button. Here the GlobalLeaseCenter asks in the first step whether the payment is a single payment or regular payment. If you have single payment, the GlobalLeaseCenter wants to know the amount here, such as 1,000 euros, and the date of the single payment. You can say here 1 month later, for example, and save your entry. Then you will see here the payment row. You can add several payment rows here. And here, for example, regular payments, here you can enter the amount of the regular payment, and here you can choose between fixed payment, variable payment. Variable payments are payments which are depending on an index, for example. And the steady changing payment is another way to add more fixed payments if you have the case where you have increase of 200 euros each year. You don't need to add 10 payment rows. You can do it over the steady changing payment function in the GlobalLeaseCenter. If we can add one fixed payment here, for example, we say, okay, the payments begins with the begin date of the component and with the end of the lease term. Here you can choose between the payment pattern. I would say we make it monthly. You can say whether you pay in advance or not. And then you can save your entries. You see, now we have here two rows for the payments. Here we have the possibility to add your residual value guarantees. The same logic. If yes, you have to add more information. Additional payments, if we have any initial direct costs, you can enter it here, or lease incentives. Next step, you can add here some real estate information, or for cars, you have also the possibility to add information here, but these are all not mandatory fields. In the next step, here we have the possibility to say whether it is a transition component or not. And here you have the possibility to add the old operating leases or finance leases, and you have the possibility to add all necessary information for the transition period. Here we say I have to correct it here. Then we can say it's a transition component, and okay. Now you see we have under our contract now two components. We added this one here, and here we have the possibility to edit your entries, to view your entries, to archive your components, or you can copy your entry. And as you see here, you have not the same button here. The reason is here this is the component status new. That means we didn't calculate it and save the calculation to the database in this case. It means until you save the calculations, I will show it now here. You have the possibility to edit your information, and after the process step 3, that means for the GOC, okay, the entries are ready for postings, and after this point you can only modify your components if you have changes in your lease contract, for example. And here you have the possibility, as we showed in the slides, to import the entries which we done here for business partners, contracts, and components. Okay, The categorization, here is only a click here to categorize. The GlobalLeaseCenter will categorize components as regular lease, short-term or low value based on your entries in the GlobalLeaseCenter. And here we see we have a regular lease. And that means it is relevant for our calculation and for the entry formulas. Here, this is our entry here. We see here we have a transition operating lease component. And here you can check in the first step your calculation for the complete lease duration until the end of the contract. And you see here all relevant information to validate your entries and to start in the next step your posting records. You see here the payments per month. This is not relevant. Can put it away. So here you see for each period here for the month, the gross liabilities, the net liabilities, the amortization, the interest, the long-term and short-term net liabilities for each period, and gross liabilities. And here you have the possibility to check your entries, and in case you see, okay, that the entries are wrong, you can go back to data collection and edit your entries. And then you can click here, save values to database, and then you can finalize your entries. But before we do it, you can, this was the site for the liabilities, and here we can check the right of use asset. Here you see, for example, the initial value of the right of use asset, the historical cost, the daily depreciation, the monthly depreciation, the accumulated depreciation until the end of the contract term. Okay, fine. And here, okay, we say the entries are correct, and you can click here, say, okay, save values to database, and the GlobalLeaseCenter will calculate and save the values to the database so that we can go forward to generate the postings in the next step. One more point. This you can save the values to the database for each component, or you can do it here under calculation for a complete company. You don't have to click for each contract component here to this button. You can do it here, or you can select here with subordinates, and you can do it for all companies. If you are here, select the parent company, for example. Okay, the next step, we are ready now to generate the postings, and you will do it here under the process step 4. One point we mentioned in here, we define with a transaction plan, the tab is the transaction plan, the account numbers and posting logics here for each business case. This is the Excel file where you can define it, and then we will add to the GlobalLeaseCenter. And as you see here, you see the book-in postings with these account numbers and movement types and the values and asset classes. You will define it only for once, and after that, it's only a click here every month to generate the posting records. For example, we say we want to generate the postings for January. Click here. The GlobalLeaseCenter generated here 7 posting records for the month January 2019. And the next step, you can go to the data output, switch to booking voucher export, enter here the same date, start the file creation, and you will find your booking voucher here in the report repository as an Excel file. Perfect. And here this is the booking voucher for our posting for the period January. And here you have several information which you need to proceed it later in your ERP system. You can see here the company code, the company name, the country, the accounting area. If you edit in the GlobalLeaseCenter the lessor, then you have the contract-related information, asset-related information, the cost center. If you want and edit in, you see the profit center, internal order, business unit, for example. And here you see the debit to credit postings, for example, for the book in of the right of use asset. You see the book in here for the lease liability. Here you see, for example, the reclassification of the net liability in short-term and long-term, and the first regular monthly postings for your payments, for example, and interest and depreciation.
I think, Burak, interesting to say also is that the booking voucher is generated by contract component. So if you have 100 contract components, your booking voucher can get quite large, which is also good, because this helps you really investigate, if necessary, certain entries and why something has been booked. So you have the full detail per contract component.
Correct.
Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and here you also have, if you work with pivot or macros, you have the possibility to generate your own template if you need another level. But here you have it for each component and all details you need. This is the point here. Okay, then I want to show. I think we don't have so much time, but 2 points are important from my side to show the possible modifications and the reports you have in the GlobalLeaseCenter. Here, for example, I will show it here with our component here. We add it here, and in case, for example, you have a change in your lease contract, and you want to reduce the lease sum, for example. Here you have the overview of the dialogues here you had in the contract components edition. And here you can search the relevant modification for your case. For example, the immediate termination, base lease term, extension or reduction. You can edit your master data, for example, the cost center. If you have a change of a cost center, you can do it here in the modification cockpit. Or if you have any changes in assets related information, for example, the transfer of ownership, the purchase option. We have a purchase option here in our case, and here we said it's not reasonable certain, and 1 year later you say, okay, it is reasonable certain that we will buy it after the lease term. You can modify your contract component here. Here you have good overview and several possibilities to add changes in contracts, such as extension option. You can add a new extension option. You can reassess extension option or remove. You can change the payments in extension option, and the same procedure for the termination option. You can add or reassess. You can change your payments here for the basic lease term. You can modify your residual value guarantees. And this is important because in the new standard for IFRS 16 for lease accounting, you have several cases which can be relevant for you. And here we have a lot of modifications to do it here in the GlobalLeaseCenter. This is one point which is important to see and know. And the last point from my side are the GlobalLease reports. Here you will find several reports, such as a contract overview. Here you have the possibility to see the added contracts and contract components in the GlobalLeaseCenter. We can generate one, for example. And here in the report repository, you can download it. Here it's also an Excel file. You can open and work with Excel files. Here we see, okay, we have in this company 2 contracts. And you can check here or review the entries of your companies. You can check how many contracts do you have, and are there any components which will expire soon, or other checks you need to do. Which is also good to see the budget plan. Here you can see, for example, I will show it now. Okay, it's not a good example here because our contract ends here 1 year later, but if you have a contract term until 2030, for example, you will see the asset values for each year and the liabilities, such as the liabilities at the beginning of the period, and at the end of the period you see what is my repayment, what I will pay interest expenses, and what is my payments in sum, for example. You will see it for each period here. One more report I can check here. The aggregated posting record entries, it's also useful report. You can see here year to date the postings you generate in the GlobalLeaseCenter to check, for example, the values in your ERP system, and have an overview about your liabilities or assets, and the P&L information. Okay, I would say, Sam.
Okay.
I
think it was a very detailed demonstration that you have given of the GlobalLeaseCenter, and it should show a bit all the features. I think if you can see it, it's rather a very complete tool where you can really manage all the possibilities that you may encounter in an IFRS 16 process. You're able to manage them through this GlobalLeaseCenter. And maybe also important to tell is that this GlobalLeaseCenter, as it is still continued with developing with also new features. So on a yearly basis, there's a new version, or even more often, there's new version issued with also new additional features, which may be interesting.
Correct. And you have also the support of the GLC. If you have questions or problems, maybe you can contact us.
Yeah, that's normally how we work, Burak, is that we often are in the first place, and our customers in Belgium contact us. We try to help them, and Amana in this case is very often a third line support, where we are the second line support. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will give myself again the presenter to finalize. I wanted to give you some best practices and pitfalls based on our experience of implementing the tool. I think one of the things that we have seen, and that often has been a bit ignored always when preparing the initial accounting for IFRS 16, is the data quality. So it's very important that you work on the data quality, that you understand also the contracts. So the Excel data that you may have now is in line with the contract. You have identified whether there are termination options, what is really the non-cancelable lease term. You have identified whether there are extension options, etc. So this is something very, very important in preparation of a migration to tool, where we also support our customers with, of course. Also important, I think, that you have support when you decide to take on a tool and to buy a tool and to implement a tool, that you have support from above, but also from beyond, so that all the stakeholders are involved. You have a good sponsor that really believes in the added value, but you have also the people that will have to work with it also have a very good understanding and a very good feeling with the tool. What I always also recommend is there's always, we want to customize because we want to have this and this. I often recommend, or mostly recommend, to use standard functionalities and try to limit the customizing. For example, customizing of the booking voucher, which is also possible, but very often, like Burak is saying, through a simple pivot table, you have generated the booking file that can be imported into your ERP. And also, customizing a tool gives always problems when you're updating to a new version into the future. And it also extends the cost and the implementation time. But like I said, for all the companies that we have implemented in Belgium, I'm not sure for Germany, Burak, but I think most of them always, in Belgium, everybody is happy with all the standard functionalities and reports.
Definitely.
Sprints instead of Big Bang, what we normally do, and maybe I told you about how we approach an implementation, is first of all, we get the question, do we need to involve already, we are a group and we have a lot of subsidiaries, do we need to involve the subsidiaries already? And do we want them to do the data collection? And central and headquarters will do the measurement. What we often recommend, what we always recommend at the beginning, is to do it in the first phase central and build up your own knowledge on IFRS 16 and on the tool at the headquarters. So do it first central with the data collection. We work with the Excels for the data upload. You can ask the subsidiaries to complete, of course, and to review the Excels that are being uploaded, but try to do it first central. And once you feel you have sufficient knowledge, then you can push down certain tasks to the subsidiaries. For example, data collection and review the measurement, which is perfectly possible, like Burak has shown, through the tool, because you can define certain roles that limit what a person can see, do, and calculate also. So try to start with sprints, try to start at a very limited number of people involved, and then expand once you have sufficient knowledge and understanding. What we also see is that there's always differences between how it has been calculated in Excel and how it's calculated in the GlobalLeaseCenter tool. What I give you here is the most often differences that are being explained. First of all, GLC will use a daily discounting and depreciation Very often in Excel, you will have a monthly discounting. So really, GLC is calculated on a day-to-day basis, which is the ultimate 100% correct version. And this is also the case for the depreciation. So this is already one element of a difference between Excel and GLC. Also in Excel, very often we have not considered whether it is an advance payment or not. We have everything considered as a period end payment, while it is an advance payment. So this will also, with the discounting, have a certain impact. Very often, extension options and termination options were ignored into the Excel. So we only looked to the base lease term, and we ignored extension options and termination options, which may have an impact. There was no consideration done for indexing, which is like also Barak has shown in the settings, but we didn't show it through a modification, that you can perfectly automate all the indexing of the payments. And also, I think Excel is very difficult to do it correctly is with the modifications, how a modification needs to be accounted for, certainly at a certain effective date into the future. Yeah, that are a bit the best practices and pitfalls that we have encountered. I see that we are at the end at 12 o'clock exactly. So we are at the end of the training. I hope for everybody that it gave you some insight. So don't hesitate if you're interested to contact us to have a more, again, a demo or a more detailed demo, or to have a discussion about your questions that you may have. You see my contact details into the slide. Okay, that's it. We don't have time for questions, but we will answer the questions separately out of the call. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.